Good morning, afternoon and evening all. This is Yorkie with episode 18 of my in-depth track guide series, and this week we are taking a look at the Circuit of the Americas from Austin, Texas in the USA. This is the second to last episode and we're going to be following the usual video format, starting off with the breakdown followed by the hot laps both in dry and wet conditions, and then finally the setups at the end of the episode. So we're going to jump straight in now, starting off with the breakdown, and we actually gain control of the car just as we come out of the second to last corner, hang over to the right hand side of the track, and basically as we pass by the shadow, that's when you want to start braking and basically just take the car through the normal line out the final corner, get on the power, start draining the curves before the start finish line and open the DRS at the activation point. We're going to keep to the right hand side of the track now as we approach turn 1, and just as we're approaching the 100 metre board, we're looking for our braking point roughly here about 105-110 metres before the corner. It's an uphill braking zone and you actually want to get the car slowed down as much as possible before turning into the apex, as it is very easy to lock up a front wheel despite the wide track. So braking hard and shifting down through the gears, shifting from 7th all the way down into 1st, we're going to turn the car in and we're looking for the bollard on the inside. Our apex point is just here on the curb. Ideally you want to clip the left front wheel just on this curb here. Try not to take too much off and try and keep two wheels within those white lines at all times. But your apex speed should be about 55 miles per hour, which equates to 90 kilometers per hour. Coming out through the exit of the corner, you basically just want to balance the throttle ever so slightly. Get on the power as you get the car straight. Touch the curb ever so slightly on the outside, but try and avoid it if possible. And as we come down the hill and start to turn into the second corner, we're going to drain about 5-10% of our curves. It's completely flat out, just try and keep a nice smooth shallow line. Now coming into turn 3, again completely flat out, just brush the curb on the inside. Same again through turn 4. Your apex point, you should be clipping just here with an apex speed of about 175 miles per hour, which equates to 280 kilometers per hour. And you basically just want to keep your foot full in on the throttle. You want to keep on turning to the right hand side to try and open up the next turn a little bit, and as we basically transition from this right hander into the left, you're going to lift off the throttle ever so very slightly to about 70%, throw the car in, aiming to clip again on the inside curb just here with an apex speed of 170 miles per hour, which equates to 275 kilometers per hour. And as I initially said, we lifted off going into this turn, but we should be full throttle again at this point here. So coming up through the exit, you kind of want to hang towards the middle of the track and try and open yourself up ever so slightly for the turn 6 that follows this right hander, transitioning into it quite nicely now. Basically just run the curb on the inside here, clipping this first apex point with an apex speed of about 165 miles per hour, which equates to 265 kilometers per hour. You want to try and keep up as much speed as possible and basically just carry that throughout the duration of the corner. As we come out through this apex point here, you're basically just going to drift ever so slightly towards the middle of the track. You can bring it back in tighter again, lifting off ever so slightly to hook up a second apex if you wanted, but instead I just try and keep the throttle kind of in it roughly about 70-80% and running out to the exit of the corner. So we're now bringing the car back over towards the middle and the right hand side of the track to try and open up this left hander of turn 7. This is the braking point just here. It's based on judgment and feel, there's no real reference points, but we're going to be shifting from 5th gear down into 3rd, so dropping 2 gears. Doing exactly that, throwing the car into the left hander at exactly the same time as we do start braking as well. You're basically aiming to hook up the inside curb just here with an apex speed of about 110 miles per hour, which equates to 175 kilometers per hour. You don't want to get hard on the accelerator here, instead you kind of want to compromise the exit ever so slightly, let the car get back over to the left hand side of the track to try and open up the turn 8 that follows. So doing exactly that, hang towards the middle of the track, bring it over to the left, you're then going to lift off ever so slightly, balance it around about 20-30%, let the car just drift over to the inside curb, clipping a very late apex just here with an apex speed of about 95 miles per hour, which equates to 150 kilometers per hour. And from about here onwards, you should be starting to bring the throttle in more aggressively, probably about 80-90% throttle. Try and get to 100% as soon as possible and basically just point the car towards the apex of turn 9, which is this left-hander just here. So full throttle from now on, hitting the curb on the inside, clipping your apex point just here. Your apex speed should be about 110 miles per hour, which equates to 175 kilometers per hour. And providing you've got this line right, you should be able to maintain full throttle throughout the duration of this corner. Let the car run over to the outside of the track and not extend the circuit too much. So doing exactly this. Full throttle, like I said, shifting up into 5th as we run the curb on the exit there, keeping at least 2 wheels within those white lines. Full throttle through turn 10, completely flat out, there's no problems there at all. And coming into turn 11 now, we're going to keep to the right hand side of the track, and our braking point is at this 100 metre board just here. we're going to be shifting down from 7th gear all the way down into 1st, and you just want to try and keep to the right hand side of the track for as long as possible, and then you're going to bring it over and aim for the bollard on the inside curb of turn 11. So I've moved across a little bit too early just here, which has kind of compromised me a little bit into my turning, but you should be clipping this apex point just here with an apex speed of about 55 miles per hour, which equates to 90 kilometers per hour. And because I've turned in a little bit earlier, I've kind of screwed myself over for the exit. So ideally what should happen is coming out of this corner here, you should be able to bring the throttle back in relatively aggressively, about 50-60%. Try and get the car in a straight line as possible. Try and avoid clipping the outside curb, and basically once you're up into 2nd gear, get full throttle. Once you're up into 3rd, you're going to start draining the KERS, and you're going to continue draining the KERS even after you've opened up the DRS board until you've got about 15% KERS remaining. Keeping to the right hand side of the track, we're just coming down this long straight now as we approach turn 12, and we're looking for our braking point after the 150 meter board, about 130 meters before the corner, roughly here, and we're going to be shifting from 7th gear all the way down into 1st. Our braking point starts at the skid markings that are on the floor just inside this red zone here, but you're going to brake hard, shift down through the gears relatively rapidly, keep to the right hand side of the track, and as we get to the 50 meter board, we're going to start turning in the car, aiming for just to the right of the bollard on the inside here. This is where your front left wheel should be clipping with an apex speed of about 60 miles per hour, which equates to 95 kilometers per hour. You want to try and avoid cutting the corner on the inside here. Try and keep 2 wheels within the white lines. Fortunately, I turned it a little bit too early and have actually cut the corner a little bit. But coming out through the exit, as long as you hook up the curb quite nicely, you can bring the throttle back in, run the curb ever so very slightly on the outside, and get the curb back over to the left, ready to open up turn 13. This is roughly your braking zone here. You're going to be shifting from 3rd gear down into 1st. There's no real indication of when to start braking. There is some skid markings on the road, as you can see there in the red zone. However, those aren't entirely accurate. I usually do this based on judgment and feel. So braking from roughly this point here, basically you start trail braking as we turn the car in as well, and you want to hook up the inside curb just here with an apex speed of about 70 miles per hour, which equates to 110 kilometers per hour. This corner does have some nice camber on it, which helps to get your car onto the inside here, but the exit is actually rather difficult as you're going to be starting to accelerate whilst also turning, and with the 2013 handling model that usually steps out the rear end, so be very patient on the throttle, basically just balance it. Once you get up into 2nd, you should bring it to 60, 70, 80%, get up into 3rd, that's when you can get full throttle. We're going to keep to the left hand side of the track here as we approach this braking zone, and it's quite a difficult one. We're going to be shifting from 4th gear down into 1st. You want to try and keep the car in a straight line as possible whilst braking, otherwise it's very easy to lock the front wheels. However, you do kind of want to hang towards the left, also slightly middle side of the track. You don't want to go all the way over to the right. So braking relatively difficultly here. We shift down into 1st gear. We're going to turn the car in. You're trying to use the camber of this corner to try and bring you in towards the apex of the corner. Ideally, you want to be hooking up the inside curb just here with an apex speed of about 60 miles per hour, which equates to 95 kilometers per hour. And coming out through the exit, again, you kind of want to balance the throttle ever so very slightly. You want to try and get the car in a straight line as soon as possible. Hooking up a nice late apex will help you get a better exit. I've hooked up a relatively early one, but the exit isn't too bad. Get on the power. Once you're up in a 2nd, go full throttle. Coming into this very long right-hander now of turns 16 and 17. Basically hooking up turn 17 just here, hooking up this inside curb. You want to try and get as close to it as possible with an apex speed of about 145 miles per hour, which equates to 235 kilometers per hour. You kind of want to hang towards the middle of the track. This corner is completely flat out throughout the entire duration, by the way. You want to bring the car over towards the middle, and then you're going to bring it back in towards the apex of turn 18, hooking up a 2nd apex of this long right-hander. Your apex speed should be about 155 miles per hour, which equates to 250 kilometers per hour. And from this point onwards, you should be starting to let the car drift slowly out towards the outside of the track. And upon the exit of turn 18, you basically want to clip the curb on the exit. So doing exactly this, still maintaining full throttle, clipping that curb, and you're going to bring the car immediately back over to the right hand side of the track, ready for turn 19, the 2nd to last corner. Basically at the start of the skid markings on the ground here, you're going to be shifting from 6th gear down into 3rd for your braking zone. It's a relatively short one. You want to try and carry as much speed into the corner and out of the exit of turn 19 as possible, but doing exactly this, throwing the car in, aiming for the curb on the inside, which is unsighted until the very last minute. But your apex speed should be on this inside curb just here with an apex speed of about 120 miles per hour, which equates to 195 kilometers per hour. So coming out for the exit from this point onwards, you should be balancing the throttle around about 60-70%. You want to be relatively aggressive with it coming out upon the exit, and you want to try and use the curb on the exit here. Try not to extend the track too much. Keep to the right hand side of the track as we come into the final corner now. Our braking point is basically just as we pass underneath this sponsorship bridge here and get to this shadow. Your braking point should be starting here, shifting from 5th gear down into 1st, ready for this final corner. Try and get all the braking done before the corner and before you start turning in. So hanging to the right hand side of the track now, braking and shifting down the gears, starting to gradually turn the car in towards the apex of the corner just here on the inside curb. Your apex speed should be about 70 miles per hour, which equates to 110 kilometers per hour, and then coming out through the exit, you basically just want to balance the throttle roughly about 60 odd percent. You're going to let the car drift over to the right hand side of the track, run the curb upon the exit, and you're basically just going to continue pushing hard down towards the start finish line. So doing exactly that, getting close to the outside curb, we're going to drain the rest of the curves, and of course coming over across the line to complete your lap. So we're now going to move on to the hot lap part of the video, and we're going to take a look at both the dry and also the wet lap. So we're going to start off with the dry one, completely unedited, the same lap as I did there in the breakdown, but without me talking over the top. Okay, so that was a dry lap. We're now going to move on to a wet lap. Pretty much exactly the same approach to the dry as it was in the final corner. Basically just take the normal racing line, try and get a good exit, planting that grip at the rear of the car, drain as much of the curves before the start finish line, and we're going to keep to the right hand side of the track, ready to approach turn 1. So we're coming up the hill now, and we're braking roughly about 5 meters earlier than we did in the dry, hooking up pretty much exactly the same braking point, cut a little bit on the inside there. Again, be patient on the throttle coming out the exit. Coming into turn 2, we're going to drain about 10% of our curves. Now completely flat out as we come now through 3 and 4. Slight lift coming into 5, and again slight lift into 6, and a downshift as well, keeping it relatively tight. Hooking up the apexes quite nicely, just trying to keep a nice smooth flowing rhythm, dropping down the gears as we come into each corner, completely flat out through that corner just there as well. And coming now down towards turn 10, hanging to the right hand side of the track, we're going to brake 5 meters earlier than we did in the dry, so about 105 meters before the corner. Getting a good exit. Once you're up into 3rd gear and the traction's there, start draining the curves, leaving about 5-10% remaining. Hang to the right hand side of the track now as we come towards turn 11. Basically just looking for our braking point again about 10 meters earlier than it was in the dry, hooking up the inside curve quite nicely, getting a good exit, keeping that traction there. Then we're going to bring the car over to the left hand side of the track. Again, same approach as it was in the dry. Try and use that camera to your advantage. Watch the rear end stepping out on you up on the exit of the corner there, and the same approach to this braking zone here and also the apex of the corner. Try and hook up a slightly lighter one, it'll give you a better exit. Now coming into this long right hander, pretty much again the same as it was in the dry, completely flat out all the way through. Coming into the second to last corner, same braking point as it was in the last time, try and carry that speed and that momentum. And the final corner again, same braking point as it was in the dry, hook up that inside curb, get a good exit, drain the rest of the curves and complete your lap. So we're now going to move on to the setup part of the video, which is the final section of this episode. And we're going to start off with the dry setup. So for our aero, front wing and rear wing angles, we're using a 1-1, 47.53 on balance on the braking, high standard pressure and size. For our balance of the anti-roll bars, we're using 8 on the front, 1 on the rear. Coming into the suspension setup, it was 1-1 on the ride heights and then a 7 and a 1 on spring stiffness. Those were the gear ratios that I was using in miles per hour, and of course the gear ratios again in kilometers per hour just there for you. And finally the toe and camber settings, all the way to the left on the front, slightly left on the rear, toe left as default. Now coming into the wet lap, or wet setup, sorry, 2-2 on wing angles, 47.53 medium standard on braking. For our anti-roll bar balance was a 7 and 1, again same as the dry. And then for our suspension, wide ride heights 1-1, spring stiffness 7-1. Gear ratios in miles per hour just there for you, and of course the gear ratios in kilometers per hour as well. And then finally, just to finish it off, the toe and camber settings, all the way to the left on the front, slightly left on the rear, and slightly right on the toe for the front. So that is going to conclude it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Please give a rating. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave it below, and of course don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. I shall hopefully see you soon, guys. Take care.